Welcome to the Carter Center's Forum on Human Rights. Today, we'll be discussing folk music, hip hop, and liberation, protest songs from Baltimore to Palestine. Joining us today, we have Ryan Harvey, a folk singer, organizer, and podcast host of Hope Dies on Last. He's also the founder of the Riot Folk Collective and established Firebrand Records with Tom Morello. Ryan has released 2 EPs with Shireen Lilith and Kareem Samara. The EPs are predominantly about the migration crisis and intersections of oppression. Next to Ryan, you see Son of None. Son's a rapper, organizer, and self-proclaimed Black Marxist. His music directly takes aim at the US political establishment, holding them accountable for their crimes and actions. Both Ryan and his son are based in Baltimore, Maryland. Lastly, we have Kareem Samara. He's a musician, composer, and organizer from London, England. His practices investigate the intersections of struggles and combines traditional Arabic instruments and electronics to create a unique soundscape of protest. He's a serial collaborator and often composes for various theaters in and around the UK. So if you'd like to ask questions today to our guests, please go ahead and join the Forum on Human Rights. You should be able to see those links here on the page that you're looking at. And also, please note, this roundtable will include videos that show violence and language that some may consider offensive, as these were conscious decisions by the artists in order to convey their message of protest. They have not been censored. However, we recognize that these may be triggering or uncomfortable for viewers and wanted to highlight this potential concern to individuals so that they can make conscious, informed decisions for themselves. At the same time, if you do find any of this offensive, I ask for you to ask yourself why that is, to sit with it, name it, and try to unpack that. With that, we're gonna start today's conversation by watching Son of None's music video, It's Like That.
I said indict, convict, send that killer cops to jail. The whole damn system is guilty as I said indict.
I want you and Fox News to get out of Baltimore City because you're not here reporting about the boarded up homes and the homeless people under MLK. You're not reporting about the poverty levels up and down North Avenue. Exactly. 2 years ago, when the 300-man march, we marched from the top of Hilton to from Hilton and North to Milton and North, you weren't here, but you're here for the black riots.
You know why black people so mad? Cause most of y'all ain't, so I'm pretty uppity. I don't know a cracker born yet with the luxury to fuck with me. Skymatic, static, and pragmatics. Only 1% is from my mathematics problematic. How many caps can they put in our backs? How many phones have to catch blacks kill by the batch? How many cutbacks can they enact? How many bombs can they drop where civilians be at? Nah, this is Molotovs in a mask rap on American cans and tear gas tracks. And another non-profit won't stop it. Pimping poverty to make some grant money off it. Nah, people got nothing to lose. Lead story 11 o'clock news, and it's like that. Fuck what you heard. They protect killer cops cause they will get served, and it's like that. I ain't taking it back cause it ain't where you're from, it's where you at. Where's Baltimore at? Where's Brooklyn at? Where's Gaza? Where's Cleveland? Where's Ferguson at? And it's like that. Better get off the fence. Demonstrate, legislative bill, self-defense. Man, fuck these cops, fuck CNN, we run these blocks. Snap a voice box and we'll speak with rocks. It shouldn't take it this long to connect these dots, yo. They don't even see us. How long it take for them to bother to deceive us? This ain't the first Freddie Gray to come between us. It's the last one to forget, and you could take that to Jesus. I put that on my people in the streets. From the leaders to the project, to the blocks, to the priests, to the medics, to the coalitions out fighting the beast. The Bloods and the Crips came together for a peace. You could take 6 pigs and put them in a line. Catch them on a cell phone cause they think they can rhyme. Let them battle the people and reap that lethal design. And that's all 6 swine charged at the same time. And it's like that. Fuck what you heard. They protect killer cops cause they will get served, and it's like that. I ain't taking it back cause it ain't where you're from, it's where you're at. Where's Baltimore at? Where's Brooklyn at? Where's Gaza? Where's Cleveland? Where's Ferguson at? And it's like that. Better get off the fence. Demonstrate, legislative bill, self-defense. America made me a nigga, but Ferguson reframed the picture. It's the truth, pure light in the booth. The X-rays displayed, no flesh in the proofs. Science in defiance, baptizing the youth. Here to resurrect the dead without heads, feds to shoot. Why? America made me a nigga, but Baltimore reframed the picture. Broken neck dialect spoken from the beyond. Phoenix from the ashes, spitting classics at the seance. Cadence in the chaos, prophets in the layoffs. Rhythms of division amplified for the payoffs. America made me a nigga, but Palestine reframed the picture. Call this Haiti in the 1780s, pre-intifada, Ramallah, Okovada, and Guatemala. Not the gangster version of commercials for vodka, where each single is a jingle helping prisons to prosper. Nah, America made me a nigga, and then we reframed the picture.
We need to, as a community, police the police because they cannot police themselves.
My name's Dominique Stevenson. I'm the program director for A Friend of a Friend in Baltimore. My vision for the city is really self-determination for people of African descent, for everyone, but pretty much for my community, which is people of African descent. I want people to be able to reclaim their communities. I want people to reclaim the spaces. I want to change the quality of life for children, for elders, for all of us. I want to see things really change on a grand scale. I want to see an end to the poverty, the suffering, the drug addiction, all of those things, that have traditionally been harmful to our community. When I work with men in prison, that's always been probably.
So as Son of None said, it's like that. That's the lived experiences of minorities within this country. Son, can you explain to our audience how the police killings of Black people throughout America, influenced you to write this song?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, police killings in America have influenced so many songs. You know what I mean? And my song is just one more in the continuation of that legacy. Yeah, too often, Black and brown people are shot down by cops, and the cops get away with impunity. Basically, they have a license to kill, and they enforce structural racism in our communities. It's not necessary, but when you look at the history of how police were developed in this country, that's the root. It's slave patrols in this country, right? And then even when you have the police forces on the West Coast looking for new recruits during desegregation, you had police chiefs looking for people who had experience in the South, right? Like it's deliberate, right? It's not a coincidence. It's not happenstance. It's not a matter of, well, there's just so much violence in these communities. It's more like there's over-policing in these communities. So my song is just, part of that tradition of saying, no, enough is enough. We can't have this anymore. It's never been acceptable, and it's not acceptable now.
No, definitely. One thing I want to highlight too is like towards the end of that song where we left off is like that's a clip of an organizer based in Baltimore, and then it goes on for a good another 5 minutes of just different organizers in your city. Can you talk about the process of what it was like working with these organizations in Baltimore and what they're currently doing to help combat these ongoing systemic issues?
Yeah, so I was really, really fortunate that so many people agreed to be a part of that, the video, because what I wanted to do was not just be like, hey, I made a song, everybody look at, what I had to say, but more like, this is Baltimore a couple of years after the uprising. These are a few of the people who have been involved in trying to make Baltimore a better place since before the uprising happened, right? So I asked them all, what's your vision for the city? And what are you doing to make that vision a reality? So, I was fortunate enough to work with Dominique Stevenson, Eddie Conway, former Black Panther, is in there. Folks from, a number of different organizations, right? So, Tawanda Jones, right? Like her brother, Tyrone West, was murdered by Baltimore City Police and Morgan State Police, right? She's on there calling for justice for not only her brother, but for all victims of police brutality, right? And it's a lot of the usual suspects, also like Ujima People's Progress Party, Nnamdi Lumumba is on there, right? Just people who've been spending a long time trying to address these societal ills that again are not happenstance, that are deliberate, that are, you know, the structural manifestations of white supremacy and capitalism.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like, thank you for that song. There's so much there, and I encourage you all to go on YouTube and check it out, and listen to it in its entirety. I have a question for all of you. What types of protest music did y'all listen to growing up, and are there certain artists, political artists, that influence your music currently?
I mean, I'll go in.
Yeah, go in.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Public Enemy, Rage Against the Machine, Burning Spear, Dead Prez. Just so many artists that were doing it that shaped my perspective from early on. I mean, I can remember the first time seeing the Public Enemy Fight the Power video and just being like blown away.
For those that don't know, son, can you explain like what that video meant at that time?
Yeah, so I mean, what you see in that video is a lot of iconography taken from the 60s. The video itself is happening in the 80s, and they're calling out all kinds of things from, police killings to what's it called, anti-apartheid, struggles. They're trying to move forward, trying to carry that torch, trying to pass on the torch of the legacy of struggle that Black and brown people have been carrying forward ever since we got to this country. So yeah, at that time, a lot of people say, well, in the 80s, there wasn't a whole lot going on in terms of the movement. It's like there definitely was a lot going on, and a lot of it had to deal with like addressing racism in the US, police brutality, which was an ongoing struggle, right? And the dawn of these like Rockefeller drug laws and all of that. So.
Absolutely. Ryan, what are your thoughts?
I mean, for me, I was like somebody who was politicized by the punk scene very much. Before I was like reading any sort of leftist or progressive books on history, I was listening to punk rock that was talking about politics and stuff. So it was really that opened up my political world. And then I got into folk music through punk, through certain punk bands mentioning folk musicians like Billy Bragg and Phil Oakes. And then, once I got into Phil Oakes, who for those of you who don't know him, was like, people always give Bob Dylan so much credit for the folk music of the 60s. Phil Oakes was kind of next to him, but never got as famous, but was writing much more kind of direct political music. And there was a lot of other people that weren't as famous as Phil Oakes who were writing really good music too. So a lot of that underground folk music from the 60s got me involved in music, but also taught me a lot about history. So those are some I would mention, but like these days, I mean, I'm inspired by music from all over the world. I look for music from all over the world that's songs of political struggle. I just think it's such an interesting medium for understanding what people are dealing with, what they're fighting for, and how they make sense of it.
Yeah, I think I listened to protest music without really knowing what it was. My first concert was a Billy Bragg concert. That was
You never
free.
told me that.
Yeah, I did. I've told you that a million times.
Oh, come on.
In my very famous Billy Bragg impression voice. But I think that those songs, reggae songs, Bob Marley, and then going into sort of like the topical blues kind of tunes that were influencing sort of like the big rock bands from the UK that were famous 60s and 70s. But it was only really hip hop where I saw that it was a protest. I don't think I really figured out that it was a protest before that. So again, Public Enemy, and just the Bob Marley kind of ones. I started to understand what he was singing about, and as I started putting the links together.
What do you think he was singing about, like in his songs? Because y'all both have mentioned Bob Marley. How has his music resonated with you? Y'all?
It was like, I think for me, one of the ones that I figured out first was Small Axe. I think that was the one where I really sat and listened to the lyrics and
Absolutely
was like, wow, this man who has like a really a really kind of, I think, a confused legacy. I don't know if that's controversial to say, but he's so depoliticized, and even, just some of his big, he wrote great love songs, but he wrote great protest tunes too. And when I figured out even just some of the sentiments, small sentiments, that was taken from other reggae songs and taken by The Clash, for example, Police and Thieves, or things like that. And then I'm like, just being a music nerd, I used to read a lot of magazines and used to like watch a lot of documentaries, and then saw the link between, like, there was no punk records when punk music started. So in between the bands, Don Letts was playing dub and reggae. So there's a direct link between reggae protest music and punk. And so I just sort of like went down black holes there, really, and would just become obsessive and would buy like 10 Bob Marley albums that no one's really heard of.
Absolutely. And isn't Small Axe also the name of the miniseries about
about West London?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's what's up.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I'd have to say Duppy Conqueror. Like my family is Jamaican, so I knew what a duppy was, but when I was listening to the song, it took me a second to be like, oh, wait a minute, he's not actually talking about like a demon, like a, hell spawn or something like that. He's talking about literally getting out of jail, like, like they set me free again, or they say we free again. You know what I mean? So it's like, he's talking about that stuff, and it's plain as day if you can see it, and yeah, just police repression, like what it's like for him and other Rastas at that time being persecuted by mainstream Jamaican society, which is still heavily influenced by, British colonialism, while, obviously they were free, but still had a lot of that influence, still had a lot of ideas about what was respectable and what wasn't.
Marley's song for me that I think of is the song Zimbabwe. And I was just thinking, like, I was talking earlier about how I got politicized by punk. I'm still being politicized all the time by music. That's not a process that stops. And that's something when I think about the Bob Marley song Zimbabwe, like it shines a light on the Black internationalism of the early 70s. It shines a light on the relevance of struggles against apartheid and colonialism in Africa and how they impacted people in other parts of the world, impacted their hopes and ambitions. And here's Bob Marley in Jamaica singing this song about Black people liberating Zimbabwe and having to fight to do it. It's not exactly your peace song that, Bob Marley is wrongfully known for. It's a song about waging war against a colonial power and winning. And then Bob Marley played at the first Independence Day celebration in Zimbabwe. So I learned all of that because I heard that song and I said, this song there's something going on in this song. I started looking into it and was interested. Did Bob Marley talk about Zimbabwe a lot? Did he write other songs like this? And then you learn a lot about history. So that's what I mean when I talk about politicization through music. It's not just about the music. It's about what the music causes you to do and causes you to seek out the conversations you have because of it. So it's a whole process.
No, absolutely. And following on that thread of like just the global impact of music, Ryan, can you speak to the international efforts artists have made in building Palestinian and African-American solidarity through music?
Yeah. And, I was thinking earlier, one of the things I was thinking when I was talking about influences is also my favorite record label in history, which is called Paradigm Records, which was, it's now under the Smithsonian, but back in the 60s, 70s, early 80s, they were putting out songs, records only from people's movements around the world. So artists you've never heard of from countries that were experiencing significant uprisings or just political movements. And Barbara Dane, she also put out some albums from Palestine back in the early 70s. But when we were having like our pre-conversation for this event, we were talking about how especially in the US, like Black American and Palestinian solidarity, how it's so present now. Like you hear about Palestine a lot in hip hop compared to any other medium of music in the US, any popular medium at least. And you see that reflected. You see Palestinians talking about, when we were having our uprisings and going through a lot of protests here in the last 6 years, you saw a lot of immediate support coming from folks in Palestine. And that, you know, that exists partly because of just the dual realities and the similarities, and with access to social media, understanding those similarities. But it also came from very intentional bridge building, you know, folks in the US doing like hip hop delegations to Palestine, bringing hip hop artists, hip hop influencers to Palestine to meet people, to build that bridge, because, you know, it's not like they were the first people to see the connection. You know, I think that, you know, folks in South Africa saw the connection a long time ago. You know, so those bridges get built. And I think that's a really, really important lesson in solidarity for anybody anywhere in the world. It doesn't just happen. Like, these things are built. They're often built very intentionally, and often over years before, you know, the common person starts to take notice of it. So.
No, that's very true. Very true.
Can't believe I just said the common person.
The common person.
Who is that?
Let's unpack the common person.
You know, somebody like Kareem, you know, like.
There you go.
Ryan Harvey, elitist.
Elitist. I've always said it, and now the people know.
Sorry, I should have said commoners.
Commoners.
Speaking of Kareem, can you tell our audience about, you know, the Palestinian and UK hip hop?
Well, there's always been, I think, as years went on, people from different, I guess, working class communities in the UK doing hip hop, and there'll be a lot of working class Arab youth doing it, as well as the more, I guess maybe some of the more heavy on the more intelligent rappers, if you want to call it that, people who were like probably influenced by a lot of the artists that Ryan and Son are alluding to. They mentioned Palestine, and they talked about Palestine a lot as a kind of an anti-apartheid, anti-racist, anti-Islamophobia kind of sentiment. I used to work really closely with a group called Untold, and they were one of the first groups that I ever even heard mention Palestine. I remember I used to run a night, and I was outside while like dealing with like some sort of like troublemakers in the queue or something, and my friend like ran out to get me and just sort of said, "They just mentioned Palestine in this song," and I like ran back in and made them do it again, because it was so sort of unheard for me to sort of like see or hear any kind of representation. And then a few years later, you started seeing like younger rappers, predominantly from London, but also I guess Bristol and Manchester, sort of mentioning it. And then you had Low Key Free Palestine was like the biggest kind of tune that came out I don't know what its timeline is, but it was definitely around Cast Lead in 2010.
Oh, dang.
2009. There's been so many that you just lose, like the dates go, and it's upsetting. But yeah, so when there was all these huge protests, Loki had this tune out that was being blasted around the world, and was a really big tune for everyone to get behind.
Yeah, and speaking of that tune, we actually want to play it for y'all, and then come back and unpack it.
This is a revisit of this tune. This was so this isn't the original one. This is like a more up to date one.
Yeah. This is from 2019. So just like for y'all, for context, for people, just think about, you know, how, you know, this music is still relevant, and it reports on the times and not just a time, and it can be used again amongst people to just advocate for change. So sit back, relax, and just take in this truth.
Sing it with me now. Free, free Palestine. 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 Ibrahim Abu could resist without a wheelchair. 10-year challenge, tell Reggae we are still here. Until that killer Netanyahu, he should feel fear. The old live through us and guarantee the children will care. Criminal, not invincible, and you know it's Samadoun still sitting in their stoic. May not feel us with you when you listen to our poems. You inspire humanity, your resistance is heroic regardless of talk. Here's time we answer the call. Through your strength of spirit, you provide example for all. How to live, how to love when attacked from the clouds above.
loud and clear, the songs you sung can't be drowned by the sound of guns, or just watch your tragic time through a satellite dish. The least that we can give you is an anthem like this. They panic tried to analyze and sanitize this, but we love you more than ever, still Palestine lives.
Free my people, long live Palestine. We will never let you go.
Sing it with me now. Free, free Palestine. 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 Free, free Palestine.
No change, no. Run away, away. All the hate you face, oh. Time to change this state, oh. No change, no change, no. Run away, away. Oh. All the hate you face, oh. Time to change this state, oh. No change, no.
Continuing oppression of the Palestinians, encircling of the people of Gaza, the killing of civilians, the burning of homes, the daily oppression, the theft of land, the apartheid system in the West Bank, where there are two road systems, and I've been, and I'm sure you have, and you see the Israeli road, you see like a spanking new highway with just the settler cars going backwards and forwards. Then you see the old Palestinian roads, and it's clearly it's people living under two sets of laws. It's an apartheid system. So all this is being uncovered, and the boycotts and divestment and sanctions campaign, which I support, and I'm sure many other people do, as a peaceful protest against the Israeli oppression. Support groups have got to keep proclaiming the rights of the Palestinians are the right to return, the right to their homeland, really, and the theft of land is Israel is breaking international law. It is breaking the Geneva Convention.
Yeah, that's that where that video is filmed is basically outside the Israeli embassy in High Street, Kensington in London. So it's the end of every protest that happens, if not the focal point of the protest. So that was, that's, it's one of the reasons that it rings true with a lot of people, because the things that are said in it are echoed in a lot of different people's work, but to have a song specifically about it, and then that one updated, talking about different leaders, etc., and new ongoings, it's something that is always played and means a lot to people,
Absolutely. One thing too, I want to encourage the audience to feel free to ask questions to our participants today. To do so, just go ahead and drop the questions in the chat function on the form, and we can get those questions asked. So feel free to go ahead and do that. I wanted to ask each of you, what do y'all think is the role of protest music during social movements? I think we've kind of spoken about that and unpacked that, but I just want to kind of explicitly ask you all, what are your thoughts on that?
All right.
Go on, Ryan. Go on.
Nah, you go.
Son, let's go with you.
Even better.
Even better.
I mean, the role, I think, in different communities, it has varying levels of influence. And what I think about, what immediately comes to mind is like the role of music in the anti-apartheid struggle in South Africa, and just how part and parcel it was, and how much music was an integral part of that society to begin with, and how it just kind of flowed. There's this documentary called Amantla that I learned a lot about this from, and it just kind of blew me away. The way that they would, on the one hand, like mock the fact that the Afrikaners didn't understand Zulu, and have these like light sounding, uplifting songs, but they're actually being like, you better beware because we're coming for you. And they're and Miriam Makeba is like, oh, those blacks sure can dance, like that's how they're interpreting it, and sure can sing, but they don't even know that they're coming at them like that. So I think music has that ability to kind of like, you don't exactly know what we're talking about on the one hand, but then it also has the ability to inspire when it's open and out front and just kind of naked, like, nah, this is unacceptable, and and we're not taking it anymore. So I think it has the ability to inspire in a lot of different ways. So yeah, it's like the grease for the wheels.
Yeah, I think that like you can't have a movement that doesn't have some kind of cultural soundtrack, accompaniment, etc. It helps educate, it helps mobilize, it helps invigorate, it helps the actual physical protest. Like I think I first saw it here in the student protests against the raising of the tuition fees. The grime and drill music was like being blasted out while they smashed up the Conservative like headquarters, and like it was one of the first times I was really proud of like the UK, like the protest visual. It really didn't look like it was this nice London English protest. But I think for now, in recent uprisings and stuff in the Arab world, for example, in Lebanon is a great one. In the revolution a couple of years ago, they were singing Sheikh Imam in the streets, and that's an Egyptian revolutionary kind of protest singer from the 70s, 80s, who's been dead a long time. They were still singing his songs there because his songs still mean something. And again, like, you know, these songs that we listen to, again, we said Bob Marley, Public Enemy, those things are still relevant and they still inspire people. And then, as Ryan said, you're still getting this new wave of anger, of education coming, and that's how things are continued, I think.
You know, I think there's questions about. I used to be more of a fundamentalist when it came to like defining protest music, right? Like I write very straightforward music about protest, right? That's what I used to kind of think of. But now we're living in this moment of like really popular political shifts all over the world, definitely in the US, you know, for better and for worse. But when you're living in one of those moments where, you know, songs that I used to sing to 20 people in a basement, the topic I was singing about is no longer, you know, confined to a basement. Like it's a normal thing to discuss now. And that makes, in a way, that song and my music far less relevant and far less interesting, right? Which is fine. Like I'm no longer, you know, shouting these bold ideas. It's just normal stuff. So the role of somebody like me in a time period like this is very different, right? I think we often think of protest music as being like that spark, right? It's like holding the fire. What happens when the fire is all over the place? What then is the role of artists? And so right now we're seeing, like, you think about it with like with African-American hip hop, right? Hip hop in general in the US and all over the world. Like you talk about Black Lives Matter, that's everywhere in music. You know, there wasn't many artists that didn't talk about that in the last 6 years in the US in the hip hop world. Even outside the hip hop world, you heard about it in mainstream music, which is pretty surprising, I think, to all of us, I could say. But given the scale of what was happening and the level of politicization in society, it's not that surprising. But that's really important, right? Like it's really important for artists from Jay-Z down to one of us to reflect ideas that people are thinking about, because it helps validate those ideas for people, right? It helps confirm that that you're right, you're on the right path. That's not a weird thing to think. You know, there are, you know, it really does depend on the time period what the protest music's relevance is. But then I also think about what politics is, right? And so I think one of the main roles that artists have, like we have, is influencing culture, right? I heard from somebody, I reached out to somebody from the Sunrise Movement, right? Very popular social movement in the US around climate change, right? And the person reached back to me and was like, oh, like, yeah, I love your music. And I had no idea this person liked my music, maybe when they were in college or whatever. But then you think like, well, that's cool. You know, like I maybe sang a show in this person's basement sometime, and now they're doing some really important work. It's not like I politicize them or whatever, but it's part of the fabric, you know, like my music was part of the fabric of the political scene that helped bring about somebody like that and doing the work that they do, just like some random punk bands no one's ever heard of did that for me, right? Like sometimes we play a really small role, sometimes somebody breaks through and they end up playing a really big role, and their song gets really well known. But most of the time we don't, and we just play that role. Like, but the final thing I was going to say on that is, like, when we talk about politics, like, politics is about power, right? So you can influence the culture as much as you want without affecting politics. And so I think a really important aspect of political music is to think about, how can my music be used to build political power towards the things that we want, right? You see all over, you look at history of popular artists throughout the world, you see musicians getting executed, getting exiled, getting imprisoned because of the role they were playing in politics, not just in culture. You know, Victor Jara in Chile wasn't just a musician, right? He was a cultural ambassador of the Chilean socialist government, right? He was merging those things. You know, Bob Marley, they said, was more popular than any of the political candidates in Jamaica, right? So, like, this is about, is this artist thinking about mobilizing what they have, the power that they've accumulated, towards political ends? I think those are really important questions for artists to think about. Like, how can I be useful? Because artists think of themselves as these individuals, right? Like, and I think we have to think about ourselves not just as individuals, but as parts of movements that can be utilized.
Especially these days with, like, the forms. I'm sure that, I think all three of us as artists are kind of navigating social media and how we talk about what work we're doing and what's going on, and promoting a song or promoting a project or something like that. And it's all set up to be individualistic and to be a brand and to be on your own and to be almost like competing, and then cliques. One of the things that you were talking about, Ryan, made me think about the point that, like, music helps sustain community and glue little bits together at, like, the most basic of levels, like whether it be you in a basement, you know, or whether it be a smaller show or a big show, and, like, you bump into people, you know, like you start a band or you start a group, or all of these kinds of things that are just they're kind of like, I think a lot of people don't pay attention to them, but really they're the stuff that actually need the most attention. Like, me and someone I do music with, Smoke Poets, like, what we do is not about us. Everything that we do is about the wider sort of, like, why are we doing this show? Like, who's coming to this show? It's because of this. We're spreading these ideas. We're talking about intersections of struggle. It's not about, oh, look, he plays that instrument really, really well, and I rap this way, or, like, it's just about skill. It's about connecting and getting people on board and using different producers, collaborating with different people, going on tour with, maybe I'm jumping the gun a bit, but, like, you know, going on tour with, like, different people. When we did the Firebrand tours, we had, like, five artists that sounded absolutely nothing like each other.
Yeah.
You know, but it was a great show, and I think people really enjoyed the fact that you had you and me, Ryan, and you had Sun, and then you had the Last International at the end, and you had Sean, Bell's Raw going on, and it was because we were there to do something. It's like, yeah, we've got these tunes, we've got this, but we had something to say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ryan, could you? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I do think there's a lot of shows that have the same genre of music, and I feel like I don't normally organize shows like that anymore in my life. I mean, me and Son used to do a series in Baltimore called Be More on Fire, and it was always multi-genre, you know, and it was all about highlighting social justice community in Baltimore, highlighting certain organizations with each show. And it, you know, there would be a poet, there'd be a punk band, there'd be hip hop, there'd be folk music. It would be whatever made sense. And so you weren't coming there to see, like, a genre show. You were coming there about the purpose. But I also think, Kareem, I was just thinking about, like, how me and you met in London, and you know, because we were playing a show, and you know, I think there's also an important thing about, like, the venue. You know, like, what's your tour? You're an artist. You're going on tour. That's cool. Where are your shows going to be? Are you thinking about how your audience is going to experience them? Are they going to meet people at the show? I used to go to these political conferences, and we all used to joke about how the most important thing at these political conferences was hanging out in the hallway, you know, skipping the speakers and hanging out in the hallway, because you meet people.
Yeah.
You know, you meet people who are thinking kind of like you are, and you build something. So, you know, when I go and play a show, like, I'm hanging out with people afterwards. I'm really interested to see like, hey, this kid who's never been to this like underground punk venue in San Diego, and he knows my music through the internet, and he's seeing me for the first time, but he's also experiencing this musical scene for the first time, this political scene for the first time, and I'm the bridge. Even though it's just one person, if I do that every town I go to and I can build a little more popularity and I can get 5 people next time, and I'm conscious about it, then I can be thinking, how do I maximize this? You know, if this is one of the outcomes of me playing shows, how can I do this better and bring more people together who are going to then connect with each other and build a relationship and build, you know, political community?
Because
Absolutely.
sorry, I'm sure Son's got an idea on this, but I was going to say that the venue really affects the space that you take up, right? If we're talking about political music and we're talking about what we're trying to say, we're not just trying to take space on the airwaves, we're trying to take like space physically. And I went to an amazing show on Monday night with a group from Chicago called the Black Monument Ensemble, and it was unreal. But that show was at the wrong venue. But it was at the wrong venue because it was part of a jazz festival, and you know they'd heard that this place was huge, but the place was like really cold, not the right sound system for them. They were unbelievable. It was an amazing show. But you know, like we should be connecting afterwards, not have like a bouncer in the middle of us and blocking that connection between the fans. Like it was like they came onto this stage and they went off and that was it. And that's not what their music says. If it was somebody else, I would think, yeah, but for them, they should be at like, you know, I don't know, not necessarily the London Anarchist Resource Centre where we met, but but they should be at like a better venue, not this corporate capitalist, new sort of gentrifying type venue. Sorry to butt in on you, Sam.
No, all good. I think that, yeah, venue is critical. And just to echo what y'all have been saying, like the purpose of the event. Kareem, you're talking about like, why are we doing this thing in the place that we're doing it? It's like, I can think back to so many events that were benefits, you know, like rarely was it, we're just doing this kind of for us. It was always about something, because that's what our music is about. That's who we are as people, right? That's how we plug in, and that's part of the culture that we're trying to amplify. So yeah, I think that going on tour, like Ryan's talking about, and making sure that the places you're going and the shows that you're having are having some sort of relevance and making it possible for people to come in and connect on another level, beyond just the music, you know, which is why having political groups be a part of the show, you know, come in table and say a few words during the event, you know, and just make sure that that's like woven into it. It makes me think about, you know, these parties out here that the Black Panthers would have, like, I think it was on the left coast, and like the music would be going, everybody be dancing, and then somebody would jump up on a table and, you know, cut the music, and then they'd break down some issue that was going on, and they'd be like, all right, let's go again, you know, and turn the music on. And it's like, yeah, bringing people together, but making time for the politics, making time for, yeah, we're having a good time, and we're also living under all this bullshit. So what can we do to address it in some sort of concrete and relevant way that's sustainable, you know, and then boom, keep it moving.
No, definitely. Ryan, could you talk about how Firebrand Records build these bridges that you're talking about? How this artists that you work with and everything?
Yeah. I mean, Firebrand's a thing that I started with Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine. Everyone here is part of that project in one way or another. You know, it's an attempt to create, you know, a very focused political record label that's kind of underground. Like, we're not trying to blow up. We're just trying to put artists together and share some exposure. And you know, also, you know, before the pandemic, we were trying to do some stuff in person a little more, you know, throw some concerts and stuff like that. But also to be a resource for people, you know, like, so we start this record label, right? It's not like it's not some crazy success story of business. It's not something that neither Tom or I thought of in that sense. It was just like, let's see where this goes. You know, I had this well-grounded feeling back then in 2013 and 14 when I started talking with him about it, that it was like a good time for unapologetic, direct political music to be more popular, and the culture definitely followed that trajectory that it had been on. And so we're seeing that. But like, for example, just we're talking about like the role of music, right? Through this record label, I randomly get an email one day from, I won't give out any details about this, but from somebody who was in exile from a country that had a significant uprising during the Arab Spring. A lot of their friends were arrested in the last few years for being artists and being critical of the government. This person fled the country. They heard about Firebrand through a song that we had put out that was relevant to them. And, this is a person in a different country, now in another country, uprooted, finds my email address online, emails me, and it's like, hey, I don't know what you guys can do for me, but this is my story. And so, built a relationship with this person, talked with him a bunch. Me and Tom even wrote an op-ed about it and never published it for fear that it was actually gonna hurt some people who were still in jail. But and then I helped as an expert witness help this person get his asylum claim. Just because I was somebody who could speak to the fact that yes, like I've worked with some of the people that he's talking about who are in jail. Like this is all real stuff. So that was like that's kind of like what we're trying to do in terms of how we relate to the work of politics. Something that I was thinking about when Kevin was talking, we were thinking about the role of protest music as well, and also about the whole theme of this night, which is the connection between also the Palestinian and the Black struggle, and also about music. Musicians also like shape history, right? They shape and reflect popular understandings, right? So when you listen to the protest music of the 60s or whatever, you're not just hearing, it's not just even Phil Oakes, let's say. It's not Phil Oakes had all of these ideas. Phil Oakes was around in the culture, and the culture had all these ideas. That's why he was popular. He wasn't saying things that were like groundbreaking and new. He was just writing good songs about things that were already influencing him, right? Which is the story with all of us. So understanding things like that, you can listen to music and you can get an understanding. This artist was popular at this time, which means these ideas were popular, which means there was a lot going on, right? But then there's also like the shaping of I learned more about the Vietnam War from an artist like Phil Oakes than I did in high school, like detail stuff I had to search for. And I was just thinking about Kevin, we were just listening to that song, It's Like That. And, he's talking about Baltimore in 2015. And the line, so simple, is like, call this Haiti in the 1780s, pre-Intifada Ramallah, or Guevara in Guatemala. Like, you can just start Googling that and just start learning about it. Start with Haiti, then move on. Yeah, start in the 1780s, then figure out what the Intifada is, what Ramallah means, and then figure out Che Guevara in Guatemala. Like, that's brilliant. You know what I'm saying? And so somebody in 20 years could find that track and really dig the lyricism, could dig the beat, whatever it is, and then could just mind blows open when they start thinking about what that stuff means, right? And that's part of our role too. Sometimes it's about just put it down and then see what, let it be, see what happens in the future.
Absolutely.
Right.
Certainly going to say
or they'll pick it up and they'll have no idea what it means. No clue. It talks about Baltimore.
He's speaking with his mouth. That's so old.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All love for the new rappers today. Not hating on them doing their thing, but yeah. I mean, I put that out just because that was always something that I wanted to hear, and other artists who would do that would always blow my mind. And yeah, like you hear it, you do the research, you learn more. KRS was like that in a lot of ways. KRS-One, and just kind of would blow my mind open, almost regularly, and that was the beauty of hip hop. You know what I mean? Like, just basically unapologetically putting out that knowledge so that people can learn from it. You know what I mean? And being about passing on information, passing on ideas, passing on confidence, passing on the idea that we can be about something, we can change the situation that we're in. You know what I mean? So
No, absolutely. There's actually a video that I wanted to play before we head out that kind of just speaks to the current context. A lot of what I'm hearing in this conversation is just the importance of music and how it can report on historical events, so that past generations or future generations can know about it. But then also how this music is built upon from past generations too. So I'll play this song real fast and then come back, ask a few questions, and then we'll wrap it on up.
Dope.
When I was growing up, I was taught in American history books that Africa had no history, and neither did I. That I was a savage, about whom the less said the better, who had been saved by Europe and brought to America. And of course, I believed it. I didn't have much choice.
In my 4x4 G63 ain't no more free Steve. I gave him chance again. I even told him please. I find it crazy the police to shoot you ain't notice you dead, but she tell you to freeze. If I seen what I seen, I guess they mean hold him down when he say he can't breathe. There's too many mothers just grieving for no reason. Been going on for too long to get easy. Like dogs and hyenas. I went to prison, my mother was courted, my mama was crushed when they said I can't leave. First I was drunk, but I sobered up quick when I heard all that time that they gave it time leave. He got a life sentence plus. We just some products of our environment. How they gon' blame us? You can't fight fire with fire, I know, but at least we can turn up the flames, huh? You gotta pay attention to the signs. Seem like the fine following the blind. Thinking about everything that's going on. I put security up in my home. I'm with my count, they right or they wrong. I call him now, he'll pick up the phone. It's 5 in the morning, he waking up on it. Tell him wherever I'm at and they coming. I see blue lights, I get scared and start running. That's be crazy, they supposed to protect us. Doors in handcuffs and arrest us. Or they go home and messed up. Knowing we need to help, they neglect us. One of them who gon' make the respect us. I can see in your eyes that you're fed up. Mess around, got my shot, I won't let up. I know that we a problem together. They know that we can storm it. And it's bigger than black and white. It's a problem with the whole way of life. Can't change overnight. But we gotta start somewhere. Might as well go here, start here. We done had a love for a year. I'ma make it count while I'm here. God is the only man I fear.
It's a state of emergency. It's been a hell of a year. Hell for over 400 years. My people, it's time we stand. It's time we demand the freedom that this land promises. President Biden, we demand justice, equity, policy, and everything else that freedom encompasses. And to accomplish this, we don't need allies. We need accomplices. It's bigger than black and white. This is not a trend. This is our plight. Until freedom. Until freedom.
Every video I see on my conscience, I got power now, I gotta say something corrupted. Police been a problem where I'm from, but I'd be lying if I said it was. I don't do this for the trend, I ain't following them. Altercation with the law had a lot. People speaking for the people, I'm proud of them. Stick together, we can get it up out of them. I can't lie like I don't rap about killing it dope, but I'm telling my youngest to vote. I did what I did cause I didn't have no choice and no hope. I was forced to just jump in and go. Shit is all that we know, but it's time for a change. Them up with this go with the gang, ain't taking us over, let's go for them change. God bless they soul every one of them names.
And you sit down, house and couch and watch it on TV. The most you gives a Twitter rant, called it a tragedy. But truly the travesty, you've been robbed of your empathy. Replaced with apathy, I wish I could magically fast forward the future so then you can face it and see how messed up it'll be. Dick Gregory told me a couple of secrets before he lay down in his grave. All of us serve the same masters, all of us nothing but slaves. And never forgetting the story of Jesus, the hero was built out of state.
Yeah, it's bigger than black and white. It's a problem with the whole way of life. We can't change overnight. But we gotta start somewhere. Might as well go ahead, start here. We done had a love for a year. I'ma make it count while I'm here. God is the only man I fear. It's a problem with the whole way of life. We can't change overnight. But we gotta start somewhere. Might as well go ahead, start here. We done had a love for a year. I'ma make it count while I'm here. God is the only man I fear.
So due to time, I don't think we don't have necessarily time to truly sit and unpack all of this, but I think it should be very self-explanatory. I think a lot of this conversation speaks to what that video spoke of. But in the last 5 minutes, I'd love for you all to tell our audience members how they can best support you in your art.
Kareem.
I don't need your support. I'm fine. I mean, I think you should follow me and listen to the different kind of initiatives and projects that I take part in, and raise money for the different political projects going on. For example, the mixtape for Palestinian prisoners that I just did at the Baladna youth website. If you Google Dignity and Hope Fund, you will find that. But honestly, I was joking about the support thing. Just being someone that like listens to music that is like underground and is not about ego, and like listening to the people that I recommend on any platform that I have, listening to and engaging with subjects that people that I work with might talk about, and coming to events and supporting other artists that might be doing something similar, I guess.
And I'm gonna plug Kareem's music because he was trying to be all humble. Y'all go follow Kareem on Instagram. Check out the stuff he's working on. This blues collaboration stuff is amazing. The mixtape he just put out is amazing. It's like 26 artists on there. We're all on there. Really, some really amazing stuff on there. Really, really different stuff too. And of course, me and Kareem have 2 EPs that we put out with our friend Shireen Lilith. And I would love for people to go and listen to that. I think it's some of the best work I've been involved with.
Definitely, I'm so every time I listen to it, I couldn't be more proud of it. It's just so great.
And that album's like themed around the refugee crisis and stuff that was going on a couple years ago, the Arab Spring and the aftermath. And it's, you know, that we put that album out as a labor of love, just to capture what we were thinking and feeling. It's not something that's going to have a big impact. It's more about a gift for people. Maybe it helps people reflect and make sense of those tumultuous years, you know?
I think they'll be Googling you in 20 years, Ryan. They'll be Googling your lyrics.
To find out how I fell so far. Did you know he used to be a leftist?
Son, how can our audience support you in your art forms?
I guess like stay on the lookout. My social media is pretty pretty bad. It's not very current. But you know what I would say? I'll just say what Malcolm and a lot of other people have said, like get involved in an organization. You'll have more impact that way. Find a way to plug in to do something about the issues that are important to you, and keep doing it, and invite artists who are talking about those issues to do events, you know, and get them plugged in. And yeah, that's what I would say. Like get involved, stay involved, find a way to do it that makes it sustainable for you. You know what I mean? Find a lane that's exciting for you, and spread the word. And we got to keep at it.
No, absolutely. Is there any final words that y'all would like to say before we wrap this up?
I think like what something just Son was saying, like if you're engaging with artists like us and people that we speak about or reference, I think encouraging people to speak as well, and to say their piece, and to artistically say their piece, and to organize a show, to get people like us on a bill somewhere, to, you know, to organize with friends, to start a band, to start making music, start making art of some sort. That's how you'll honor relationships and movements, and get and educate yourself and educate others in the process. And you know, that's the best way to supporting us is supporting a community, which is supporting us all, and that's the main thing, I think.
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Josh.
Ryan, yeah, that was a great, informative conversation, and I really hope that, you know, all of y'all who took the time to, you know, be with us, look inward to see, you know, the impact that you can make in this world, because it's more than possible. It's just a matter of you believing in your own reflection, which I believe in, and I hope you believe in too. Thank you all from London to Palestine to Baltimore to Atlanta to Seattle. Thank you all. I also want to thank Jason Parker, who helped produce this so much. Appreciate you, Karen, Ryan, for allowing us to have this platform in space. Thank you, and have a good evening, afternoon, or night.
Thanks a lot.
Later, everybody.
Peace.